Hi, this is Carrie Brownstein.
This is DJ Premier.
This is Darren Aronofsky.
You got the RZA right here.
Rose McGowan.
Radiohead.
Aisha Tyler.
Tribe Called Quest. Fred Armisen.
Fritz Paul.
Javier Munoz. Seth Meyers.
Frankie Cosmos.
Flying Lotus.
Hi, we're Chaim, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Talkhouse Podcast. I'm Josh Modell. This week, we've got an absolute legend of a singer-songwriter in conversation with a guy who's no slouch himself, Lucinda Williams and M. Ward. Now, Williams has been writing and recording incredible songs since the late 1970s, though she didn't really break through in a huge way until 1998's stone classic Car Wheels on a Gravel Road, which garnered her the Best Contemporary Folk Album Grammy, her second but not her last, and also some of the most well-deserved critical accolades of that year. She certainly didn't rest on those laurels, having released close to a dozen more revered albums since, many of which found themselves also at the Grammy and Americana Awards ceremonies, as well as in the hearts of listeners and other songwriters. Last year, Williams released a fantastic memoir about her journey from small-town Louisiana to the music business and beyond. It's a lovely look at a life well lived called Don't Tell Anyone the Secrets I Told You. The other half of today's conversation is M. Ward, another literate singer-songwriter with a varied career whose music can't be easily pinned down. He's been called folk, Americana, and indie rock, none of which quite do his songs justice. Ward has been making records for 25 years now, and his discography includes not only thoughtful, beautiful solo records, but an entire catalog of albums made with actress Zooey Deschanel under the name She and Him. Ward's latest solo album is last year's Supernatural Thing, another set of songs that feel like they exist out of time. Check out a little bit of Too Young to Die from that album right here.
With my face down in the mat, the champ says, are you too old to fight? Or too young to die? First heard that from an old guy. I'm too young to die.
In this conversation, Ward and Williams talk about the time they worked together when Williams contributed vocals to an M. Ward record back in 2009. Then they get into Williams' memoir and just scratch the surface on her incredible life and career before the conversation turns to their literary influences and a lot more. Enjoy.
Hello, hello.
Hey, there you are.
Hey, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I got my coffee, so I'm getting there.
Nice to see you.
You too. It's been a while.
It has been a while. I had to look it up.
Yeah.
We made a song together in 2009?
Is that when it was? I was trying to think. That's the last time
Crazy.
I think I saw you. Was when we
Maybe. And then you came out.
studio.
I did a show in Nashville. I think you came out.
And I sat in or something.
Yeah. What was that venue? I can't
Was it the
remember.
Ryman?
Maybe. It's nice to see.
And it's good to see you too. You look good.
You look great.
I
Is
like
this
your
home?
hair, kind of messy and
Yeah. Still waking up here in Portland, Oregon. Where are you today?
in Nashville.
Nice. Okay.
And we've been in the studio recording
Great.
with Ray Kennedy at Room and Board. So we were working till about midnight last night. And
All right.
so then we got back to the house and I stayed up probably too long, before I actually went to bed. So, but I'm fine. I'm good. I got my coffee and I'm ready to rock.
Great. I'm happy to hear new music is on its way.
We've been on this roll where we've been we're either out on the road doing shows and when we're home, we're in the studio.
Great.
Kind of crazy, but
Great.
I sort of like it that way,
Yeah. Not too much downtime, right?
Yeah, not too much downtime.
Too much downtime can be bad sometimes.
That's true.
So I read the book and I love it.
Thank you.
And I'd love to just talk about my favorite parts if you're up for.
Okay, sure.
I mean, the first question would be like, how easy was it to make? Just kind of pressing rewind on your life and experiences. And is it an easy thing to do?
The hard part of it wasn't so much the remembering and, being taken back to those places as much as it was the logistics of doing the book. I'd never written a book. Of course, I write songs all the time. At first I thought, oh, this will be, I can do this. But just getting started was hard.
Right. Like, where do you start? It's hard to know where to start, right?
it's hard to know, how much paper am I going to need for this?
Yeah.
I was using legal pads. I can't type, so I had to write it all out by hand.
Okay.
And I was trying to get suggestions from more seasoned writers, like actual real writers, book writers. And I talked to this one friend of mine, Nicholas Davidoff.
Okay.
And he wrote, he was in Nashville a lot visiting while he was working on his book, which was on country music and stuff. Sorry, I can't remember the name of it.
No, it's all right. We'll look it up.
Anyway, I got him on the phone and he said, okay, here's what you need to do. Starting tonight when you go to bed, get a notebook and write in that notebook before you go to sleep, and do it every night.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I guess just to warm the brain up, get the brain exercised and get your head in that space of, like journaling, I guess.
Yeah. And did you have old journals? Like, were you able to access old, like, writings that you had? I don't have no plans to ever write a book, but it seems like the songs themselves would be sort of milestones that you can jump off of, right? Or on records. That's
pretty much what I did, was because I was used to already, when I perform, I tell a story, tell the audience a little story at least behind all the songs. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, that's what this is going to be like pretty much, but maybe I'll just dig a little deeper than I would on stage.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I didn't heed Nicholas Davidoff's advice. And so when I started getting in trouble as I was writing, of course, I beat myself up and blamed myself because I didn't do what he suggested.
And when you say get yourself in trouble, where was the difficulty?
It had more to do with the logistics. The difficulty was the publishing company pushing, saying, we're running out of time.
Okay.
Because I got the hang of it at a certain point, but now I'm wanting to go in and rewrite stuff, because I'm my own editor, and I would go through and, look through the drafts, and I'd find little paragraphs that I wanted to rewrite or, do all these corrections and stuff. And,
So maybe there'll be a volume 2.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I love it. And I feel like it's such a great window into your life and a beautiful background into so many of these songs. And I love what you're talking about, how the essence of the blues and, what we do as writers is take, from our lives, and it's said in just such a great and relatable way. There's this one part where you talk about how certain families are dysfunctional, and you were able to, I'm going to find this page and I'm just going to read it for the listeners.
I was able to see beyond that.
Yes.
Yeah. I was able to see the good in it.
Yeah. I want to read this one page if that's okay.
Thank you for bringing that up. That's so sweet that you brought that up.
It's just not something that I think the average listener to your music or any music really can really understand, and it's written in a way that's just really clear and beautiful. So this paragraph starts off that my family was dysfunctional, but that's not what really matters to me. What matters is that I inherited my musical talent from my mother and my writing ability from my father. My stepmother taught me how to set a table with cloth napkins and silverware for a dinner party. And Grandma Day taught me about mixing coffee grounds and eggshells to make fertilizer for plants, and what banana pudding and fig pickles are supposed to taste like. And Mama taught me church hymns, and Papa taught me decency and diplomacy. In a way, my family was wonderful. Grandma Day crocheted pillowcases, and my Aunt Alexa on my dad's side kept track of every family member's birthday and always sent a card and sometimes one of her woven pot holders. And that's one of my favorite paragraphs. I feel like it's hard to summarize your life, right? But I feel like that says so much.
Well, that's what I was trying to do. So I'm glad that it came through that way.
It's really powerful. And I also wanted to just thank you for all the just writers and poets and musicians that you've helped expose me to. And I'm sure hundreds of thousands of others. People like Memphis Minnie, I would not have heard of if it wasn't for your work.
Great.
And her music means so much to me now, thanks to you. How did you discover her stuff?
I just kind of stumbled across her music because I was at that time in my life, I was just digging and digging for anything I could find. I was just obsessed with Delta blues, country blues, just all blues stuff, and I would go in record stores and browse through the bins and, just discovering and learning about all these great blues artists. But the other way I might have been exposed to her would have been through Maria Muldaur, who covered a lot of Memphis Minnie songs. Because I had this one album it was her and Jeff Muldaur called Pottery Pie.
I'll check it out.
It's just the greatest record. It's so cool. It's so good.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah. It's just one of those kind of obscure records that you stumble across, this many stuff, and did it really well.
Yeah, I've heard the name of Maria Muldaur, but I haven't checked her out.
Don't You Feel My Thigh?
Okay, that sounds good.
Don't you feel my thigh? Don't you feel my thigh? If you feel my thigh, you're going to make me high. Don't you feel my thigh? Something like that.
I'm going to have to look it up.
Yeah.
And also Anne Sexton, who's a poet that you mentioned a bit in the book. And I went to school for literature, and I was exposed to a lot of great writers. Her name I never really explored much, but after reading your book, I went out and got some of her stuff, and she's powerful as well. How did you discover her?
Well, my dad knew her,
Okay.
Because the writing world was kind of like the musician, singer-songwriter world. A lot of them knew each other. We always lived in a college town when I was growing up, and my dad would be teaching at the university there, teaching creative writing, and there was always a writer coming through town to give a reading. And, these amazing writers would come into town. We'd go to the reading, and then one of the senior writers, like my dad or Jim Whitehead, somebody would have a party after the reading. And those were the best parties I've ever been to.
Right.
After writers reading and then going to one of the professors' homes and to a party, it was just the best.
And as a kid, you were probably like kind of a fly on the wall, or were you able to? Yeah.
I was kind of a fly on the wall, and, just learning how to drink, learning how to imbibe.
Yeah.
Carefully.
Right.
They would all be drinking Jack Daniels, usually, bourbon, whiskey, scotch. And standing around with their drinks, talking about writing and literature and worldly matters, and laughing and making these great jokes.
And at that age, you were probably maybe not aware of some of their reputations or like their work, right? Maybe some years went by, and was there a time where a light bulb went on, and getting to know their work and then realizing this person was in my living room?
Yeah, like Charles Bukowski came to one of those parties once.
Amazing. And what are your memories?
Well, he wrote a book called Women, which I managed to read, and it was actually wonderful. And he peels the layers off and gets down underneath things. I was aware of him and his work, and he actually, in his book, he talks about going to his professor's house to a party. And it was my dad's house.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
The book that I read that I enjoyed at a younger age was called Women. It was just more of a look at his life, contemporary life, it wasn't really, it's not a biography really, but just more his ramblings, about different women he'd been with, and, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I got exposed to his stuff in college, and I loved it. And I thought for a long time that this is a writer who's very off the cuff and almost
funny,
consciousness, and hilarious.
Yes.
And then later I realized, okay, there's this another layer to his work that's actually really thought out and really intelligent, and it made me have to go back and.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I think a lot of people just assume, some of these guys, like he was into that beat thing.
Yeah.
Like Kerouac kind of.
Yeah.
And, like I think a lot of people think, oh, those guys are just, they drank and they partied all the time and they slept all day, and, there wasn't much discipline involved, but
Right, or much depth.
I beg to differ.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And sometimes it takes a couple readings to realize, okay, this has a lot of depth to it.
Exactly. Yeah, and a lot of thought
Mhm.
that went into it.
Another part of the book that I love, and that's a huge part of the book, is I feel like for music lovers and also people who love literature and the history of literature in America, I feel like your book is a window into a time of all these cross sections of life, whether you're, in literature and music. And I've never read anything that touches on that. There is an intersection.
Wow. Thank
I
you,
feel like
Matt.
your book is just like the intersection. And I also love this part that your grandfather, because he was a preacher, and he had this incredible foresight right into our current presidential election.
He described himself as a socialist Democrat. I remember my dad told me that one day.
And this was in the 40s, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. When he got involved in the Southern Tenant Farmers Union struggle.
In Tennessee or?
No, that would have been in Arkansas.
In Arkansas, okay.
Yeah.
He has this, you quote this great passage that is just incredibly prophetic. It says, in all the areas of human life, there's a fierce struggle for control going on between those who want to restore a vanished past and those who want to create a better future. And it really seems like we're in the eye of that hurricane right now.
Yes. And he passed that down to my father.
Mm-hmm.
He took it one step further and turned it into poetry. But you can see how it comes, forth from the same seed.
Yeah, it's like you have two giant forces that sometimes we don't see it, but it's very clear that it's like a universal forces at work, especially when you're talking this election that we're in right now.
That passage you read is actually from one of my grandfather's sermons.
Yes.
He had given my father a copy of some of his sermons, and my father handed it down to me, and that was part of one of his sermons.
Yeah, it's very prophetic. It goes on to talk about world wars and the worldwide depression, and talking about the need. I think for some people it says there's those who want to set the world back in the precise order it was before the two world wars and the worldwide depression, as one would arrange a living room after a wild party the night before. Which is
yeah. He was wonderful. My grandfather, my paternal grandfather.
Mm-hmm. I love what you were talking about, how William Faulkner is just someone that you tried to get into, and I struggled that same struggle growing up.
Really?
Reading, in literature where I went to school in California, William Faulkner was kind of like somebody that you were supposed to love.
Yes.
And I've tried multiple times, and it's never really hit me. So I was happy to read in your book that you share the struggle.
Yeah. I thought, as a Southern writer, it was kind of like a rite of passage almost, to adore Faulkner. And I'd been reading Flannery O'Connor and Eudora Welty. So it felt like the natural next step, And I fell madly in love with Flannery O'Connor's writing.
Me too.
And I loved Eudora Welty and Carson McCullers and, all of them. And so why not Faulkner?
Yeah.
It felt like the next step. And I just didn't.
Something about his voice.
Didn't get into it.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get some letters about this.
This would be a great debate.
Yes.
Late one night in somebody's house.
Yes.
Over
Faulkner.
A few drinks.
Yes. Let's set it up.
It wasn't what he was writing about. It's just, I think, like you said earlier, a minute ago, the voice that comes through. When I'm reading Flannery, I feel like she could be sitting there with me in my house in the living room. It's more conversational kind of, I guess.
Yeah.
And just, I don't know, more street, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Faulkner impresses me as being a little more formal, dare I say.
I'm with you. There's like a warmth, I think, with Eudora Welty and Flannery O'Connor, and there's like a kind of a chill from William Faulkner's voice that maybe I just haven't penetrated, but there should be some sort of I'm sure there is somewhere. This debate is heated somewhere online.
Yeah.
As far as
it would be fun to get into.
Yeah. So many amazing writers from the South. Who's going to be the names that are in the canon, and whose names are going to be forgotten?
Let me put one out for you who was a poet who lived in Fayetteville, Arkansas when we were living there. My dad was in the creative writing department at the University of Arkansas. There was a young, up-and-coming, brilliant poet by the name of Frank Stanford.
Yes, that's in your book.
Amazing stuff. Yes, I think it's in my book.
Yes, The Battlefield Where the Moon Says I Love You was his kind of opus, right?
Yeah,
yes.
It's kind of stream of consciousness, sort of, I guess, but Southern soulful stream of consciousness.
There's a great chapter about him and your experiences with him in the book. I was going to bring it up because I wasn't familiar with that name, and I feel like your book is shining a light on his work. But maybe he already has did he already have a reputation and I wasn't aware of it?
Yes, he had somewhat of a reputation, but not widely known, but certainly known among the poetry world.
Yeah. For people listening, I would say to check out this specific work, The Battlefield Where the Moon Says I Love You. It was beautiful. This book is just incredible cross-section between music and literature, and I feel like it's a window into your history via your music and your music via history a bit, and it's written with such warmth, and I hope that there's more writing to come, Lucinda.
Thank you, Matt. I'm very impressed with your literary background and education and everything. I had no idea that you attended that you studied creative writing. And where did you say was in California at UCLA?
No, a small town called San Luis Obispo, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I was not smart enough to get into UCLA.
Oh, God.
But it was a great school. It was a great education. I made a lot of great friends that ended up being close friends in the music world. And I got really exposed to the American writers, but the ones that hit home just as equally are some of the writers that came from Ireland and in England. James Joyce is still up there. He's, I think, maybe similar to Faulkner, but for some reason, there's something about James Joyce. I don't mind that it is a little bit cold at times, but it's him and T.S. Eliot. I just kind of get hypnotized by their language and their voice. And it's one of those things that stays with you forever, and you can read it over and over again, and it never gets old.
It's interesting. I have to insert this little kind of quip. I don't know what it's called, but you were talking about James Joyce. I was having a conversation with Roseanne Cash not too long ago at one point backstage at a show we were doing together, and we started talking about book writing, and I was going through this really stressed out period where I was just worried a lot about it, and whether I was doing it correctly, and my father wasn't alive to have any to chime in or give me opinions and stuff, which is something he would do all the time with me. And Roseanne perked up and said, "Lucinda, you don't have to be James Joyce." and I at which point I immediately said, "Yes, but that's just it. I want to be James Joyce. I want to sound like James. I wanted the book." I didn't want to sound like I'm just a musician writing my life story. I wanted it to be an actual, like a dedicated, actual good book that people would want to buy and read, not just because it was written by me.
Right. Right. No, that it comes across. And it's like you said, with the writing of Eudora Welty, it's somebody that you just reading the book, you feel like they're in your living room and you're getting to know their life in an honest, real warm way. Lucinda, really hope there's more. Maybe this Roseanne Cash conversation can be the jumping off point for volume 2, because I'd love to hear more of that conversation. But I feel like we covered some good ground, Lucinda.
We did. I feel like we could sit and talk for a long time.
I know. Let's do this again.
We've never done this before. All the years we've known each other, we've never actually sat and talked like this.
I'm so happy that Talkhouse put us in the ring like this. Shout out to them. And just giant thanks to you, Lucinda, for all of your music and now this book that I just love it. And
thank you.
Hope to connect with you again in the studio soon, or
me too.
See you somewhere out there.
Same here.
Traveling. Take care, Lucinda.
Thank you, Matt.
Great to talk to you.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the Talkhouse Podcast, and thanks to Lucinda Williams and M. Ward for chatting. If you liked what you heard, please follow Talkhouse on your favorite podcasting platform and check out all the great stuff at talkhouse.com. This episode was produced by Myron Kaplan, and the Talkhouse theme is composed and performed by The Range. See you next time.